I'm delighted to be joined today by one of the world's great restaurateurs, the founder of New York-based Union Square Hospitality Group. He's been an inspiration to many a restaurant entrepreneur and has helped shape the global restaurant market, not least through his book, Setting the Table. So welcome from Connecticut today, Danny Meyer. Danny, how are you?
Thank you. Happy to be here, and happy to see you and Will.
Good. Yes,
and all of your
mentioned
guests.
Will. So I need to introduce Will to the audience as well. So we're really delighted also to have Will Beckett, a mutual friend of both of ours, one of the co-creators of the Hawksmoor chain, who is joining me to put the questions and to add a restaurateur's perspective to today's conversation. Danny, I know I've been trying to get you to Peach 2020 for many a year now, not least, starting from when we first met in London when you opened Shake Shack, but schedules never work. But I suppose there's one upside of the pandemic. I don't have to get you on a plane this year, and here you are. So we're really happy. As I said, you're in Connecticut, but obviously your business is based in New York City. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about, how bad New York's been hit. How's your business and how's the restaurant scene in that city?
It's not great. And what we've been doing, we're about a 2-hour drive from New York. So I go down to the city about 4 days a week right now. Unfortunately, we cannot do what we've done our entire lives. We've been taught that if you just use your head a little bit more and work a little bit harder, that you can generally, and get some good luck, I guess, you can generally solve almost any problem. But we cannot outrace this virus, and we can't open what we're not allowed to open beyond the capacity levels that New York City and New York State allow us to do. So it's and in many ways it reinforces what I love about our industry, because no one ever got into this industry because it was easy. We are a bunch of entrepreneurs who really believe that when you make people feel better, you can help the world feel better. And I see people trying so hard to do anything. We've flexed all of our entrepreneurial muscles, takeout dining, curbside service, selling wine out the door, selling groceries out the door, sidewalk dining, right now in very, very cold weather with heaters on the street. New York looks like a shanty town of outdoor dining shacks right now. So everybody's trying, and I so appreciate that. But this industry is, the greatest thing about this industry is how we bring people together, and that's the very thing that doesn't work in a pandemic. And it's very frustrating to have your hands tied and not be able to do the thing that you really love doing.
Yeah, because you've got capacity limits as well. So you've only just really opened inside. Is that right?
Right. So as of September 30th, for the first time, New York permitted 25% indoor capacity. We had all really, really hoped that we'd be at 50%, which is where the rest of the state was at that time. Can you imagine hoping to be at 50% capacity? I mean, as if that's a great thing. And the state allowed us to open at 25% capacity, now with a curfew of 10 p.m., meaning that if anybody is seen with a bite of food in their mouth past 10 o'clock, you can be fined for that. And restaurants they're running out of money right now, quite frankly. The federal government is the only government, relative to city and state, that can print money. And what I've really sort of analyzed with this whole thing of late is that the city, the mayor, really has one primary driving incentive right now, and that's safety. Whatever happens, it was so painful at the beginning when New York was both worst and first to experience the pandemic. Nobody wants to go back. We all have post-traumatic stress disorder, and the mayor only wants to keep the numbers low. That's the only thing he cares about.
Yeah.
The governor in the state cares both about safety and about the economy thereafter. So there's a little bit more of a balance. The federal government just is so dizzy with politics that it can't do anything right now. And unfortunately, the federal government is the only entity in the United States that can print money and therefore provide relief for the businesses that are not able to be open.
Danny, you've touched on a couple of things that
yeah, Will, yeah.
I was going to say, Danny, you touched on a couple of things that I find really interesting, which is, one is the difference of experience in between our cities or our countries, which I'd love to get to. And one is just the way that this pandemic has changed, I think, kind of some of the ways that we might try and lead an organization, or even the ways we might think about hospitality. So I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. You talked about like how you can, by doing something small, you can make a big difference. One of the things I've noticed is that the pandemic's changed how we think about where our focus should be. You know, is it our own company? Is it our industry? Is it our city? Is it our country? Can we think any further? I know you've been someone who's engaged at all of those different levels. Have you been affected through that?
Well, Will, I think that's a really great question. And, you know, getting back to what I was saying about the restaurant industry in New York City, you have to understand, as Peter, as you noted, I'm in Connecticut right now. This is where I came when we were on lockdown in the city, where we were not allowed to come out of our homes for many, many months. And I'm not alone. A lot of people who were fortunate enough to leave the city left. And a lot of people have not come back ever to the city. Our offices are 80 to 90% vacant right now. Tourism is just about non-existent right now. There's no reason for business travel to happen in New York. Why get on an airplane when you can get on Zoom? And then many, many people have not even returned to their offices. So then you look at the restaurant industry. If there's one spark of life that the city has seen, it is these, I call them shantytown shacks, all popped up all over the city. And that has given both a sense of safety and life, a spark. And that in and of itself, I think, has encouraged some people to come back to the city. And so as a restaurateur, I do think about our responsibility. We're only open in 3 of our restaurants. I say only because there's another 9 that we've not been able to reopen. They're asleep right now. We will not probably be able to wake up some of them. I do not believe that when this is over, we will have our company intact. And I'll take it a step further. Having had to face the worst professional day of my life, which many of us have had to do, and lay off about 90% of our company at the end of March. When we do come back and reopen restaurants like Maialino and Marta and the Modern and Manhattan, you probably think I only open restaurants with an M in the name. But when we do, when we are fortunate enough to reopen those restaurants, they'll be very different teams. It'll be like opening a brand new restaurant from scratch because, frankly, we don't have all of our chefs and general managers intact. I don't have any idea where all of the service staff went, where all the cooks have gone. Maybe they've left New York for good. It's not like a football team where you have everybody on contract and you just have to say, we can get back into action, come back now. So it's a very, very... It's a tall slope that we're all on.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful. I'm very, very optimistic long-term for New York City because, you know, it's an irrepressible spirit in that city. It's never been an easy place to live. It's always attracted people trying to accomplish something for a greater purpose. But I think the landscape is going to look a lot different because a hell of a lot of leaves have blown off the trees. And so whatever grows over the next couple of years is going to be very different and very new.
Something that we've felt, Danny, at Hawksmoor, because we've had to make some redundancies as well, but some obvious differences, I guess, in the way that we've we've had to get through this. Whereas I think in New York, there hasn't been protection for employees, and your only two gears have been neutral and first in terms of how you can run your restaurants. We've been through the gamut, forwards and backwards.
What about reverse?
And reverse, yeah. But we've had crazily busy times, and we've been shut down again. We've had curfews and all sorts of. In Scotland, we can't serve alcohol. All sorts of different things, but we've been able to keep the core of the team together because of the way the government intervened in terms of staff. How do you feel about that in terms of culture at Union Square? So obviously, such a massive part of your business. How much of a challenge do you think that is to kind of grow that again from the people that you have kept together and the stuff you have got written down?
Well, I just finished a meeting about that very topic, and we have, knock on wood, been able to keep our very, very core team. Let me put this in perspective. On March the 13th, we had at Union Square Hospitality Group, we had about 2,300 employees. On March 27th, we had 150 employees. And I thought that was as deep as we could possibly go. And of course, back then, the only thing we had to go by was the experience in China. And in China, they were just starting to reopen 9 weeks after the first outbreak. And so we said to ourselves, we'll be reopened about 9 to 10 weeks after the first outbreak. Well, of course, that's only gone the wrong way since then. And so 150 employees, the following month, we cut that down to 75. The following month, we cut that down to 45. And when I talk about 45, I'm talking about the core. I know many, many restaurateurs, friends of mine, who were either smart enough or I don't know what the word is, they cut everybody right away in March, everybody. So they had no payroll to carry going forward. And it's almost as if they knew this thing was going to go on for a year and a half. Today, because we were able to open on the sidewalk and then open indoors for 25%, we've rebuilt our company back to 350 employees. But now that we see that cities across America, New York is now an outlier somehow as being one of the only major cities that is not on zero indoor dining. Michigan has cut it off, Chicago's cut it off, San Francisco has cut it off, Philadelphia just cut it off. It's only a matter of time before New York contracts again. And so, Will, the tough thing as a leader is you say, if you believe that this is not the thing that's going to end the world, and I'm in that camp. I think this is awful, but I don't think this is the thing that's going to end the world. Then implicitly you believe that this is going to end. And then you say, all right, when it ends, who will we be and what will we have done? And I'll tell you one thing right now, as awful as it is to have built up a business over 35 years only to dismantle it, I'll be damned if I'm going to cut right down to the bone and cut right down to the muscle, because there's no more fat, I'll tell you that. But
sure. Yeah,
we got to go forward with somebody.
Yeah, Danny. I mean, you're obviously thinking about how New York or a lot of the other markets may come back. Obviously, one of the businesses you've been close to and helped launch was obviously Shake Shack, and that's obviously operating. That is operating some of its international markets. Are you learning anything from that about how businesses can come back or continue to trade? Perhaps we're looking at perhaps a move more towards fast food and convenience. How are you seeing that? And is that going to influence the way you guys come back?
Well, I think that there are some parallels, but then there are many that just don't exist between full service restaurants and limited service restaurants. We call the category that Shake Shack is in fine casual. It's certainly not fast food. No one ever accused Shake Shack of being fast. But it's it takes a lot of the learnings from fine dining in terms of ingredients and culinary style and trainings, quite frankly, hospitality training, and applies it to a quick serve model. And what we've learned from Shake Shack is that immediately Shake Shack was able to pivot to a 100% curbside pickup and delivery model using digital ordering as the primary locomotion of that. And, we're trying that like crazy in the fine dining full service arena. But frankly, there's a limit to the number of dishes that you would get in a fine dining restaurant that people actually want delivered to their homes. So take, for example, a 2-star Michelin meal, or whatever level of refinement you want to talk about, and you can see the plate in the restaurant with the beautiful plating and 8 ingredients on display. That doesn't translate to a delivery person giving you something in a plastic container, and it's not necessarily what you want to eat at home anyway. So what we're seeing that people want at home are, not surprisingly, things like burgers and pizza and lasagna and barbecue, that where the presentation itself isn't that important, and where the ability to reheat it without killing it is also very, very strong. So yes, we're learning from a business like Shake Shack, which has been incredibly athletic. I know Will knows our CEO, Randy Garuti, very well. Randy's done a magnificent job pivoting Shake Shack. There's a limit to what you can do with the kind of food that we serve, and certainly the kind of experience that people come to us for, which is truly a social experience of being with people.
I don't think Will mind me saying that actually one of the great things Hawksmoor have done is Hawksmoor at home, and I did it this last weekend with my family, having a virtual dinner party with fantastic steaks which are delivered and you cook them, so that works. But I think another thing Will and I were talking about, I like both your views on this, is if people are getting more used to convenience and safety and process, because that's part of going out now. How does hospitality play against efficient service going forward? Do you think consumers will want something different? I know Will's smiling because we've had this conversation already.
People are definitely getting used to a lot of changes. We have a plexiglass divider between you and the host when you're greeted. You use your iPhone to hit a QR code so that we can have a contact-free method of contact tracing if, God forbid, somebody in the restaurant that night had the virus. There's a bottle of hand sanitizer with our name on it on every single table, which you're welcome to take home with you. You get your menu by a QR code on your iPhone. You never have to take out your credit card to pay, or have your credit card handled by somebody else. And you're asked to put on a mask when a server approaches the table. We have air purifiers. We have a product for our staff members right now, which we hope to actually implement with our guests, called Health Pass. And that's made by a company called Clear, which in the United States is known as primarily for the product in the airport, which helps you get through the security lanes much more quickly. And Clear is now implementing a new product called Health Pass, so that when you come to work, you know that all the people you're working with are healthy. So we also have advanced air purification for the 25% of people who are dining in our restaurants. So we're trying absolutely every single thing we can. It's costing us extra money for a lot less income, and there's a limit to how long it'll go on. That said, I think dining guests are fine with that. They want the experience of not just having you cook good food for them and pour good wine for them, but they want the social experience of being with people, even at a safe distance. And they're willing to put up with things. I think there's a lot of things that will never come back to how they used to be. For example, I don't think there's any reason that restaurant wine lists need to be nearly as long as they once were. I don't think restaurant menus need to be nearly as long as they once were. We've necessarily curtailed both because we can't put more staff members in the kitchen. We don't need to have, 5 bar backs and 6 sommeliers per restaurant. So by the way, pastry chef, we've only hired back one pastry chef, maybe none so far. No, just one pastry chef so far. The chefs are figuring out how to make the desserts, or as you would say, the puddings, all by themselves. So there's a lot of things that people are, and people are not squawking about it. They're fine. They're fine with, the tart that the chef made as opposed to the fancy dessert that the pastry chef would have made. I love pastry chefs, but it's an example of what restaurants are having to do to make ends meet.
Well,
I was going to say the reason I smiled when you had that conversation with me the other day, Peter, was when we first reopened the restaurants in July, and probably endlessly ever since. I've said something to people at Hawksmoor like this, which is all restaurants are going to think carefully about safety, and they're going to be thinking about efficiency, because you've got to think about efficiency when your capacity is capped. And I want us to think about those things and do them well. But if we forget about hospitality, if we forget that fundamentally people go into restaurants to be happy, not just to be safe, then we'll be massively missing a trick. And my personal experience of reopening restaurants is that hospitality aspect is the thing that I think has been part of Hawksmoor doing pretty well, actually, relative to many other people, because we deal with risk as an industry all the time, right? We deal with whatever, E. coli or whatever it is. The kitchens are full of risk, restaurants are full of risk. Customers don't think about it. There comes a stage where what they really want is just to feel happy and know that you are dealing with the risk. And this was obviously a much greater risk, really, on people's minds, but fundamentally, I believed, would eventually fall into the same space. That's got to be taken as a given. COVID secure, given. Hospitality is, I think, what will still separate great restaurants from others.
I agree and disagree, and I'll tell you why. I believe that hospitality I think safety is the new hospitality. I think it's the table stakes. I can't feel like you're on my side if there's even a scintilla of a doubt that you're going that extra step to make me feel safe. And Will I know I would feel very, very confident going to Hawksmoor. And the reason that you are able to express your hospitality is that, in fact, I feel safe. I think safety is the new ambiance in a restaurant as well. I think that anything we can do up front in a gracious way to make it clear to our guests that we've thought about X, Y, and Z, and then some, allows our staff members to feel more comfortable, allows our guests to feel more comfortable. I've been to many of my colleagues' restaurants in New York, and they seem to fall into really 2 different categories, maybe 3. One category is it's very clear that they don't care. And I've seen this. I see outdoor dining tables too close together. I see people not abiding by the capacity limits indoors. I don't know how they're getting away with it. And I don't know why anyone would go to those restaurants. Then you have restaurants who are going so far overboard. They're walking around with the temperature gun and taking everybody's temperature like 6 times during a meal. If the server comes to your table and you're not wearing a mask, the server just looks at you like you did something wrong and won't even give you the wine list until you put on your mask. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and there's no hospitality there because they're just like health Nazis. But I think what the vast majority, fortunately, are more like what you're doing, which is we've got you, we know how important safety is, and we're going to make it clear to you that we're on top of that. And now let us show you the hug. But until they do that, I can't even receive the hug. So I think we're on the same page here, but
We're totally on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a bit of nuance here. Danny, before we come to an end, unfortunately, we could go on all day, but we have a time limit on this. I've got a question actually from Gary Goodman at Young Pingo, and it follows on from this about, if you were writing a sequel to Setting the Table or updating it, what would you focus on? And more importantly, what would you call it?
My book agent has been asking me this question for several years. And I keep saying I can't write a book because I'm living it right now.
Yeah.
I tell you what, every day there's a new chapter being written in anybody's book. And I wish I could answer that question, Peter, but I just can't right now. I think that we're all experiencing so many things that we never imagined before, and we all have to use our own compass to navigate through a sea that we've never seen on any map before. I'm grateful for the question, and I just don't, unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but there are some great stories. Here's what I would say. Whoever you are, I think if ever there were a time to keep a diary and to take notes on a daily basis, this is it, because this is one for the history books, and the way you react to things is going to be part of that history.
Yeah. History needs to be written when it's over, and it's not over yet. I think that's where we are. It's absolutely fascinating. Thanks for your time, Danny, and Will. Thanks for joining us as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, Danny Meyer, thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.